Oh, that's going to be great. The stream just started as I went like this, which means it's probably going to be like the thumbnail image that's like right before people hit play, like doink, like this Poindexter moment. Hey, everyone.
Actually, I was thinking Poindexter as well, and I feel like I don't even know where that reference originated from. I just know it from like childhood.
Yeah, I don't know. People say it, and you're like, yeah.
You're like, yeah,
like, you know. Sometimes, like I say things, and my son is like, "What does that mean?" Like it's a expression or like a phrase, and I have to really think about if I even know the origin story of that. Like even just this morning, I was walking him to school, and he was talking about the storm that we're supposed to get, and he was hoping that this itty bitty little tree on the schoolyards wouldn't get blown over, and he called it the little Christmas tree. And it's because it's like, and I said, "Oh yeah, the Charlie Brown tree over there." And he was like, yeah. And then I thought, I don't even know if I know why people call it a Charlie Brown tree. Like there must have been some sort of holiday special with a very
tiny little sad, pathetic tree.
Yeah. But like, I'm like, I say that and I'm like, I don't even know. Yeah. Like, why do certain things stick around? I don't have any idea.
I don't know either, but my partner, Ukrainian is her first language. And so it's one of those things, like just being around like family or friends, and where like you just don't realize how weird English statements are and idioms are until you have anyone of any other language that English is not their first language, where they're like, well, what does that mean? And so I'm constantly getting myself in conversations where I'm like, I'm like, I've been asking AI lately to be like, can you explain? I'm like, I don't know what this means. I'm like, it's just an expression. And actually, I was watching a TikTok recently, and it was a woman who was talking about how fun it is to just make up her own expressions, because the English language is just so screwed up that she just like drops them in conversation just to see if she can get a rise out of people. Yeah. I wish I could find it because she had some really good ones in there.
Well, I have to appreciate the creativity of autocorrect for making up new words, because the other day I went to write automatically and it autocorrect to automagically, which I have to say I quite like. And I slacked my team and I was like, let's start using this in our everyday speech because it's fun. And I would love for things to be automagically. I would love for my bank account to automagically have extra zeros at the end of it.
So many ways you can use that word.
Like, yeah, like let's be automagical. I don't even know. I don't even know how I would define it, but I was like, yes, thank you, autocorrect, which makes a lot more sense actually than like for a really long time, autocorrect always autocorrected the word will, like I will go to the store. It autocorrected it to Eric.
How does that even make sense?
And I'm like, where did you get Eric? And also, I don't even know an Eric. Like,
did you accidentally like save it? I did this yesterday. I accidentally saved comparison in the dictionary of my computer incorrectly because it was like, do you want to? And I was like, yes. And I'm like, oh shit, like that is not what I wanted to do. So
I have no idea.
I'm gonna pay attention to.
I have no idea. I mean, I have a cousin Eric, but like I'm not talking to him.
Yeah,
enough or enough for it to be in my. So, but for a really long time, every time I put will anything, it would auto. And sometimes I wouldn't catch it, and so these text messages would go to people, and it would be like, I Eric the grocery store, and I Eric the bills at home, and I Eric this, and I Eric that, and people were starting to think that there was somebody in my life.
That's a valid reason for believing that. That's really funny. Oh, the joy of words. Like, even though we work with words for a living, it's what we do. And yet, you know, things like autocorrect really, you know, aren't our friends sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for as much as I work in words, I'm constantly messing up words like out loud. And I'm constantly getting phrases and expressions wrong. Like I mix like two things, you know, that are not supposed to be. And my husband is always like, how is it that you are an editor and book coach when you talk, sometimes you're completely incoherent?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I've used it up all day. And now I have nothing left.
I agree, because even if it's just a simple communication, there's a higher standard, I think, from people within the industry that like our communication is a higher standard from others. Do you want to, my favorite expression that I butchered so many years ago that I still use just as a day-to-day, because why not, is the greasy bird gets the wheel. I said that a long time ago, and my girlfriend at the time was like, what did you just say? Like, the wheel, obviously. And she's like, could you just slow down and like evaluate what is coming out of your mouth? And now I just say it because why not? It captures a lot of vibes in one sentence.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
It's my favorite.
I can't even think of the ones that I've screwed up, but I get the same reaction. My husband's like, huh? Does not compute.
Yeah.
But anyway, here we are. We've digressed for a good solid 5 minutes, folks. We're just warming you up. We're getting you used to our vibe and our energy here on Unscripted with Ally and Jenn, where we talk about the dish, the dirt, and the deets on writing and publishing. And we've had some really awesome episodes this year. So if you haven't checked any of those out before today, please go head over to either Jenn or I's LinkedIn pages or our YouTube channels. Catch the other episodes. We've talked about books ROI. We've talked about the numbers you need to know in writing and publishing. We've talked about your ego getting involved in choosing a publishing path. We had a phenomenal, so good session with a guest who came on and talked about the use of AI in writing and publishing, which was like real wide, wide mind opening. There we go. Example of everything that we just talked about right here live in an example. We did an extra one at the beginning of this month with one of our authors that Jenn and I both have had the chance to work with and bring her book to the world. And that was a lot of fun. And today we've got a whole new brand new topic. So, and this is season 2. So there was a whole bunch of really amazing material from 2024 that's also available to you. So please go get all the scoop, all the dish, the dirt, the deets that you need to be successful on this path. And if you're here right now, drop something into the comments for us so we know you are with us live.
Yeah.
Jenn, you want to introduce us to today's topic?
Yeah, we are chatting today about, is my topic worthy and relevant enough to be a whole book? And I believe this comes up in conversation, or why we thought this was a good conversation to talk about is I find myself in conversations with authors or aspiring authors, or maybe they think they might want to be an author, around this exact thing where it's like, could this be a podcast? Could this be a blog? Could I just do a series of articles about this? Like, does it actually have to be an entire book? And it's the imposter syndrome side of things of, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Or does someone else care enough about my story to actually go through the many, many steps that it takes to actually put this into a form of a book? So there's a couple of different angles that we can kind of dissect from this conversation today.
Yeah. I also think too, that you can look at it differently based on whether we're talking about prescriptive nonfiction or we're talking about memoir, right? Personal story. So where do we want to dive in?
Jeez, I don't even know. Well, I don't know. Maybe just like really start with the imposter side of it, right? Which we have talked about past episodes, but really thinking about like, how do we pull apart, is my idea both worthy and is it relevant? Because I feel like those two things are kind of very intertwined, and imposter syndrome is real rampant underneath.
Yeah, that's so true. So I think the first thing that I would want to state is that part of this question about worthiness and relevancy sometimes has to do with like whether or not an idea is unique enough or original enough. And so I think one of the first things to kind of dispel here is that there are very few unique and 100% original ideas really out there anymore. Humans have been around a long time. Books and writing and content has been around a long time. And so unless you've made a miraculous new discovery in some sort of field of something, right? We're really iterating themes, ideas, transformations, storylines, whatever it is. We're iterating things that have already been talked about and already out there, right? So for me, when it comes to thinking about, okay, is it relevant or is it worthy enough to talk about said thing? It comes down more to, I think, your conviction, your voice, the way that you're going to argue or inspire or help to get somebody to see maybe something similar that's already been said, but in a very different way. But if you feel doubtful and you're feeling like you're not the voice, or you're not the expert, or you're not the this, or you're not the that, right? Going back to this imposter syndrome thing, then really we've got to start there. Where are those ideas coming from or stemming from? Is it that you feel less credible in your field? because you don't have a number of awards or a number of certificates or a number of, titles or something? Is it more personal? Somebody told you at some point in your life that you were a good writer and now you believe that you can't like write a whole book. So I think it's kind of like digging into the root of this feeling of limiting belief or doubt in self for your capability or whatever. Generally, you think about some of those things.
I agree with everything that you just said. And I think the other piece is kind of popping up for me is that because I think in the same vein, the idea that someone else has already written something better than me, or like it's already been, there's going back to like your statement of they're like, there's no original idea, right? Like if we all just kind of carried that, there would be no books because we would all just reference back to a book that was, published 100 years ago. All right, it was already covered. So I think that there's that component of it too, of like, where does your unique voice fit into this? Because if you do have the conviction and you have worked through the emotional side of things to say, okay, it is relevant, I am worthy enough to be this one. The next stumbling block I often see for people is that, well, someone's already done it. Or, what's unique enough about my approach on it that it's going to make a difference. And I feel like our book sisters are good examples of that, right? Because in the fact that the books came out almost at identical times without even like realizing it. I think that that's something to be said too, because like you can have Vanna White is showing our book sisters.
My son has a Post-it note on it.
Right? Like similar in size, almost identical topics, just a slightly different way that we approached it, right? Like they really are like the perfect sisters, honestly.
They're beautiful. And they're both award-winning. Also, I don't know if you heard the news.
I don't know. Did I?
Do Not Write a Book got its 3rd award this past weekend.
Yes,
girl.
The
Independent Book Publishers Association in the reference category.
Amazing.
Isn't that the one that you won the year before?
Sure did. Yep. That's awesome.
Okay. So I love this example. I'm so glad that you brought it up in terms of like, there is space for similar books. Now, Jen, how would you say, since there's space for both of these, what do you think is the difference between them, which is why the space can hold both of them?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think it's just our different approaches and our different experiences, right? Because I think like in your case, it's, you with your co-author pair. In my case, it's me, which I don't even think makes a difference. But the goals that we had for them are also very similar, where we're trying to get more information into the hands of more people. And I think if more people came from a place of like abundance, generosity, curiosity, all of those things, I don't even think that there needs to be a uniquely different angle in something if you have specific goals. Because for me, I just had this happen yesterday. I was so excited. A woman found something that I posted about my book somewhere on LinkedIn, reached out to me, is based in Europe, and was like, I read your book and I know that I want you to be the publisher of it. Like, was just so, she's like, I read it and I just felt like this person understands me. This person gets it. That is because of my unique approach to it. It's the same content as your book, but it's your unique approach to it. And it's Bridget's unique approach to it in terms of how that content lands with the average reader. And I think someone could read both of our books and be like, wow, there's like supplemental, a little bit of overlap, a little bit of things that may not have been mentioned in this one, but it's mentioned in this one. Yeah. And someone will still have a takeaway at the end of like, ooh, I'm really resonating with Ally, or ooh, I'm really resonating with Jen. And for us, because I think we're both coming from a place of just sheer generosity, that it's like, I don't care whose book gets bought. I'm just happy that someone is getting the information that they need to take to the next steps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, perfect case for like, it's not necessarily always about your book having to be 100% different. But even so, it will be different to some extent, right? Jen and I are not the same people. Bridget and I are not the same people. Bridget and Jen are not the same people, right? So, even if the material is similar or complementary of each other, it's going to be explained in a different way with different examples, potentially different resources, maybe different exercises or tips, like whatever. So even if they're covering kind of the same content, they're in the same genre, right? They're still not going to be 100% the same. I think when people are looking at, can I do this? Am I worthy of this? Is this relevant enough? This is where, I'm a big cheerleader, and I know Jen, you are too, of having a strategy to begin with and doing your homework and having an outline and having a really strong foundation for getting started. And I feel like when you do things such as market research, comparable title research, thinking about what your audience might need, looking at what else is out there, what exactly do you want to say about it? How is that maybe different than what somebody else has said? When you start to dive into those details, I feel like what you're really doing is kind of picking holes at the inner critic's argument that you're not worthy and it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Because now you're like, oh, wait, this is my angle. Oh, wait, there's only 2 books out there that's like this.
Yes.
Oh, wait, I know that this is how I'm going to address my content. And I think that when you do that, when you take that extra step, okay, to look at all of those questions and collect all of that data, what really ends up happening is you going, oh, this is relevant and here's why. Or this is worthy of being out there and here's why. Now, that's all what I would call like the science piece of it. It's like research, it's data, it's comparing. I think where it gets more challenging is when it's not really about what else is out there, what's been published recently, what's the unique angle. When it's more about, can I do it? Am I strong enough to do it? Am I resilient enough to do it? Am I brave enough to do it? Then we're in like a different arena where simply doing some research maybe might not be enough to like give you a boost. And like right now, we're obviously talking predominantly about prescriptive nonfiction, I think. I can still do the same things with memoir, you know, find out what else is out there and things like that. But when it comes to memoir and your personal story, even if there's 15 other memoirs that are about, let's say, a parent with Alzheimer's or cancer or something like that, your story is still very unique to you, even if circumstances are similar to other people's. So you can do all that research and that's good to know. You still want to know all of those things. But when it comes to the worthy or relevancy question about how your book fits among the market of others, you're asking a couple of different questions and you're looking at it a little bit differently than with prescriptive nonfiction. So if we just think about, let's say, the emotional piece of it, you know, do I have the skills? Do I have the talent? Do I have the wherewithal, the resilience, the perseverance, the, you know, all of those types of things? What would you say, Jen, needs to happen?
I think everything is outsourceable. Like, I think that every possible resource that you need, if you have the conviction, is available to you. Whether it's, I have this strong desire to do this, I might be a little still on the fence whether or not I'm specifically worthy or it is relevant enough. But there are people that will push you that next step to help you get out of that funk. So I think it's more about making, like, declaring it, right? Like declaring, I am going to write this book, and letting all of those horrible feelings that are going to surface that will, you know, that have been beaten into us for decades of our lives. I think when all those things come up, you can work with a therapist to help kind of figure out the root of the issue. You can work with a book coach if you're not a strong writer. You can go off and try to write it on your own and then realize, oh, wow, maybe I do need some help. You can pick up a book like mine or a book like yours. Like mine has like a whole step-by-step process to know like how many words you should be writing and how to put it into a system that works for you. You could try doing that, right? So I think that, to me, so often, I think the author experience is portrayed as this isolating, lonely journey, when the reality is that it does not have to be. And I think if more people had that kind of support system around them, then the worthiness and the relevancy will kind of like fade away almost on their own.
Yeah. So here's the other component too, is I feel like this question of worthy and relevancy will come up at different stages, but I feel like it's the most potent at the very beginning before anything else has happened. Right? Which can stop you right in your tracks if you're like, I don't even know if this is worthy or relevant enough to even begin. Right. And so that's where I feel like, you know, grabbing a free call with a publishing professional to talk out loud is helpful. Collecting information that you don't yet have. Just brainstorming, like, where might this idea go? Like, if you were to pursue it. I think what happens is we get caught up in the question of, am I worthy or am I relevant? So we take no action. And in taking no action, we don't actually answer our own question. Am I worthy? Am I relevant? You know, is this relevant? So you have to do something, right? In order to get to the answer of those questions. Maybe you will decide once you read one of our books that this journey isn't for you. You're like, oh my God, this is going to take too long. It's going to take too much money. I don't want to go through all these steps. Like, I'll just blog the rest of my life. Like, totally fine.
Yeah.
But you might also find that after reading, collecting information, talking to other people who have published, that with a better understanding of the various steps, the components, the people out there to help, that now you're like, oh, I think I could figure this out. I think I could do this. But you have to go after something. You have to take some sort of small action in order to truly decide which camp you're going to fall into. I don't think it's enough to just go, am I worthy? Is this relevant? And then stop, right? You're never going to really figure out anything that way. I also feel like worthiness and relevancy is a clarity question. It's a question of how clear are you on what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're trying to say, which can then give you a little more nudge on like this idea of worthiness or relevancy in terms of like, should I do it just by itself, or is there enough here to make it a whole book? Right. So you have to gain that kind of clarity. And again, to gain clarity, you got to do something. Like reflect, meditate, journal, talk it out loud, go get information. So there's a lot of pieces to this that we can, break this up into small segments. But from like a memoir perspective, a lot of people, for me with memoir, the idea of like, is this story worthy of being told? Is this story relevant to anyone? Comes down to how clear is a person about what they're trying to say as like the main tenet of the story they're going to tell. And have they figured out how their story is universal experience? If they can start to see outside of themselves and their own isolated experience and incident to understand how it transcends to like the humans on the other side who need the story because of X, Y, or Z, like then they're like, oh, now I see how it's relevant. Yeah. Because 10,000 other people in the country have gone through the same thing, right? And maybe they haven't stumbled upon the book that really changed their mind about something, or the book that really helped them through that. So I really think, again, you got to get clear. You got to get clear about the who, what's, whys in order to really get to the bottom of these questions.
And clear about who the reader is and what transformation you want for them. I think that that's kind of the other piece of it too, is that like we can get clear on what we want, but what do we want the reader to feel? What do we want them to think? What action do we want them to take? And really thinking from that standpoint. And I like your example of like, maybe it's only 10,000 people, like what our population is 300 million, right? Plus. So like 10,000 people is like a drop in the bucket, but that's 10,000 people that might be desperately searching for information on a very specific lived experience that no one else is writing about, or very few people are writing about. And in those cases, like you used cancer as an example before, I think if someone is either newly on a cancer journey supporting someone else, they're probably consuming every person's just to like help them set their own expectations of what's going to come next. Right. Yeah. So I don't think that there's in memoir, like I'll go back for a second. My memoir called House on Fire. I wrote that with one reason and one reason only. And it was to help find the person who's having a similar experience to me, not feel alone and like they were worthless as a result of whatever that specific experience. When I was going through the height of all of the shit that was happening, which was the peak of it was literally 10 years ago at this point. I found one book that wrote about reactive attachment disorder, which is like the through line in my book. Most people don't know what that is. Most people don't know what that means. I found one book, and it was written by a super Christian woman who had a very different kind of how she got to this place. And as a queer atheist woman, like there's a misalignment here where I'm like, I'm not like, I feel like if this person encountered me in public, I would be like tarred and feathered. Like it was that level of like religiosity that was involved. But it didn't matter because I was so desperate to find somebody else's story that went through a similar lived experience. And so when I wrote mine, I'm like, it's just now another version out there, right? Like, so you have this extreme, maybe mine's a different extreme. So someone can kind of come in and say, I am desperate for information. And here's at least 2 people talking about it. And now there's more books about it. But I think that that's, especially with memoir, that's the key. Because
Mhm.
my lived experience versus your lived experience, we could be sharing the same damn memoir even. And it's
Yeah.
still going to land differently with different people for just different reasons.
Yeah. So here's a beautiful, like, it's not in the book space, but it's storytelling. So I just had the wonderful opportunity of traveling last week down to Concord, New Hampshire, about a 2.5 hour drive from where I am, to see a prior client of mine take the stage as a part of an event that New Hampshire's chapter of the National Association of Mental Illness was putting on, called This Is My Brave. And the speaking event is to raise awareness and to destigmatize mental illness and substance abuse specifically. So there was 10 speakers for the night that were chosen. They had to audition like a year ago. They went through lots of mentoring to get their stories crisp, to practice delivering them in, like a oration kind of style, like verbal. And so we heard from 10 different speakers that night. Some people rapped. Some people did like pretending they were reading a bedtime story. Some people used props and had kind of a performance style of storytelling. There was like a TEDx kind of style, like just, images, but then, kind of just delivering the material. And then there was like a slam poet. I mean,
So cool.
These 10 people all hit on very similar elements of experiencing mental illness in their life or substance addiction, but not a single delivery, not a single story was anywhere near the same.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. And they were all back to back. So like, if you think about that, like, let's think about it as books. If every single one of those people each had their own book, and they all were covering the same thematic thread, which was destigmatizing mental illness and substance abuse, you would get something completely different from every single one of those stories, even though they were all in the same vein, right?
100%. Yep.
And so this is the beauty and this is the power of the unique lived experience, the unique voice, the unique lens. None of us see the same thing the same way. None of us experience the same circumstances the same way, which is why there is room for all of these stories to be told in whatever way they're coming out, speech or written, right? But every single person on that stage, right, knew what they were attempting to say and do in the thing that they were telling, right? So that's really what's at the heart, whether it's memoir or prescriptive nonfiction, right? Going back to what Jen's talking about, what do you want the audience to walk away with? Who are you trying to reach in the thing that you are saying? Again, when you can drill down to those things and you can get clear on those things, you're much closer to understanding the worthiness and relevancy of the book.
Yeah. It is such a brilliant example, like such a good example, because someone who's interested in that topic, they're just going to keep consuming more and more books about it. Right. And I think that that's also very much in the fiction space, right? Like when someone finds an author that they love, they're going to read all of their stuff. But if someone's really down any particular rabbit hole, especially in memoir, they're going to keep reading more and more similar. So like there really is, to me, and Lord knows there's enough books being published every year, but like, I still don't believe that there's such thing as too many books, because we are all such unique humans, and there's still so much opportunity for every single book that is published.
It's still like the lowest hanging fruit in terms of like how to start some sort of change, knowledge, transformation, right? It's economical. If you can afford to buy a brand new book, you have libraries. I mean, hopefully we'll still have libraries, but we won't get political. Anyway, the point is that in a perfect world, right? Like books are everybody's kind of like entry point if and when you can't afford something that might be more expensive or more time consuming or less accessible because of geography or any number of other things, right? Books contain whole worlds, right, of information, stories, and things that we need as humans when it comes to feeling less alone or wanting to change something about our lives or wanting to learn a new something for whatever reason we want to learn it. But if we take away the emotional side, if we take away, we'll say the fluff, okay, and you're like, give me some hard stuff that I can like grapple with, right? Like concrete, tangible stuff. Like, how do you know if your book idea is a good one? Or, you know, how do I know that like a publisher will see the worthiness of it the way that I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this goes back to market analysis,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think it goes back to you understanding what's out there and how your book compares or contrasts, how your argument comes across of those things, your passion and conviction, your clarity around who you're talking to, why it's important, why it matters, and what you're going to do with it, right? And getting all of that written down.
Yeah. And knowing how to articulate that in conversation
Yeah.
with a publishing professional. I talked to 2 people this week, and I can't even say the topics because they're both so specific, but 2 completely different conversations where I talked to one person and she knows everything about who her target reader is. I mean, like down to like all of the psychographics of like their experiences, their emotions, like at what point in the buying process they would be when they would need this book as a resource. Then I talked to somebody else.
Wait, is that because this person worked with you before on marketing?
No, I thank you for saying that, but no, it's just she read my book.
I know that you bring people through all of that in some of your programs, and so I was like, is this a student of yours who's come prepared to this conversation?
I could say she's a student because she read my book, and that's what prompted her to reach out to me.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Like,
all right.
She definitely
I had to know. Well, number one, I wanted to plug you, but also it's very rare that people come like with that much knowledge.
She was
into a
fire, like on fire. Where I was like, oh my God, there's so many things we can do together. Like we were both like
high vibing. You were just in love, like
it was like instant love fest, complete instant love fest. Then I talked to somebody else and I'm like, what's your book about? And he gives me one word. And I'm like, okay, I need more. And it was like pulling teeth to try to get him to go to like give. I'm like, who's your audience? And he's like, anyone who reads self-help. And I'm like, okay.
Wrong answer.
I need like, can we go a little further? And like, I just couldn't get it out of him versus her. And like, there's no comparison to their worthiness or the relevancy. Both of their topics, incredibly relevant. They're both 100% worthy of putting this out there. It was the difference that someone knew how so clearly how to articulate it. Even when, I don't know how this happens to you, like you talk to an author and they are so excited. And sometimes like we're the first point of contact for somebody and they are just throwing every idea, every thought that's ever crossed their mind about the book in different directions. But if you, like we as professionals know how to pull the pieces down to make sense of what they're saying. Like to me, I'm like, you can throw, it doesn't matter what format you're hitting me with. Like if you're giving me information, I can figure out what you're trying to do and I can synthesize it into a much more clean package by the time we're done talking. But that is because someone's been really sitting on it and thinking about it and thinking about like, what do they want the reader to experience? Those are the conversations I find to be the most helpful, because if the author knows what they want the reader to experience, everything else washes away because all of those moments of doubt no longer matter because it's like, oh, well, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the person that needs to hear this message. So when the doubt comes up, it's like, no, Ally, it's not about you. It's about so-and-so who's going to read it instead. And so we're able to kind of like put our own BS aside because we know that there's a higher purpose involved for why we're doing it to begin with.
Yeah. Well, I think this idea of worthy and relevancy is really attached to ego, right? So if we go back to the conversation we had a couple of months ago about is ego driving the bus when it comes to choosing a publisher, you know, ego is definitely a part of this conversation around like, am I worthy? Am I relevant? That's about us, right? A lot of the time, whereas we're not necessarily thinking about like, okay, wait a minute though. The book is a final product to be purchased, a final product to be shelved somewhere. So now it's a piece of a much larger ecosystem, right? And so where does it fit? Where does it belong? And so when we start, I think, putting the CEO hat on, which is something that I talk about and Do Not Write a Book, and we start treating the book as a business, thinking about it from that lens, and we get a little less emotionally attached, then I think we can start making some different decisions and looking at it in a different way where we're not getting tripped up over our own crap, right? And getting it where it needs to be. Now, I've also seen like maybe the worthy and relevancy piece isn't tripping people up in the beginning, but then as they get going and they're developing the manuscript, right? Now they're freaking out as they get closer to like the book getting out into the world, because now they're like, what if someone doesn't like it? Or what if someone finds fault? What if someone argues the point that I made? What if someone, right? And so then we get this new kind of imposter syndrome, fear and doubt, you know, because we're about to put it out there, you know, and now it's very scary to put it out there among all the other things, right? All the other books that have been done that might have had great reviews and great readership, and to know if it's going to hold up against, you know, everything else. And I think, again, if you're going through the process, doing your due diligence, going through with professionals, professional editors, professional coaches, professional publishers, you know, it's a team effort, and everybody should be looking at what needs to be done in order to make that book the finest it can be, so that by the time it comes out, while you might have a appropriately kind of anxious excitedness, right, about the book coming out, which I think is normal, you at least want to be able to say, no, I 100% stand by my book because I did everything in my power to make it the greatest book that I could.
Totally.
You're never going to lose that kind of like, ooh, like, people like it, right? Because that's what happens when we produce anything for the first time, and we're putting it out there for a very big place that can sometimes be unfriendly and unkind. But if you're really like white knuckling it, like you're driving through a whiteout snowstorm, then I would encourage you to pause and like take a look at the manuscript again and figure out, where is that like an elephant sitting on your chest, you know, pressure coming from? Maybe there's something else that needs to happen, because like that level of anxiety, you know, might suggest that there's more work to be done.
It could be more work to be done in the writing, and it also could be more work to be done in the mental health journey leading up to whatever the thing is. I had in my memoir, I had one passage, and it ended up getting removed because of my levels of anxiety, like you just said, where I was like, okay, if someone's reading this, and my memoir is so exposing, like everything is there. So if you want to know anything, it's all there. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was one specific spot that I'm like, this is stressing me out. Like, if somebody knows this, I can't handle this. And in talking to the editor, they're like, having that there it's not adding anything. So we can just get rid of it, and you don't have to have the stress about it, because it's not really adding any additional element that's not being addressed somehow differently. So that alone, I was like, oh. And I was able to isolate it to the one specific thing. But I do still have people, and I know when people tell you they read your memoir, it's the same like visceral, like type of like reaction. And it's been out for 5 years, and I still have a reaction when someone says they read it. I don't think that's going to go away. And I've made peace with it. And I think that's all sometimes we can do, is just like learn to coexist with that anxious feeling.
But like you said, like you need to measure like what's like a healthy level of like anxious feeling, and then what's like a signal that something doesn't feel right and needs to be addressed. With my memoir, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, there was a chapter in there about the first time that I had like a face-off with racism in elementary school. And by face-off, I was not obviously the target, but I was a witness or present to a moment in time. And I was attempting to be the savior. It failed miserably. I was 12, by the way, or maybe even younger than that. But I was very anxious about trying to tackle such a huge topic in one letter in my memoir as a white person. Very aware of my whiteness, very aware of my privilege, very aware of mixed audience, like meaning not knowing who was going to read it. And you know, it could be from any ethnicity, race, background, like, and very aware of what I was attempting to say, but being worried that it was going to come across in the most, like white fragility or white blindness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and which was not what I was going for.
Yeah.
But like, how do you say that without saying it? And then when you say it, it just seems very much like that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah.
Because I was super uncomfortable, and I was like, do I yank the chapter?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, this feels like a really critical moment in time for me.
Yeah.
Definitely, because really it was not so much just about that one isolated incident, but more about the small town microcosm that I lived in,
Yeah.
that kept the rest of the world out and didn't prepare me for other things to happen later. Right. So I was like, no, I can't take it out. So for me, my solution to that was more beta readers, and specifically with sensitivity readers.
Yes.
So I asked friends of mine that were people of color to read the letter from their perspective, knowing that they would tell me, like, if I really messed it up. Now, the problem with that, of course, is like, tokenizing your friends.
Yeah.
Right. You've picked 3 people of color who you trust and who trust you and are going to doesn't mean that they're going to represent every person of color who could read that chapter and find fault with it. But, for me, it was like, I need to know that I did my very best to try to explain what I'm really trying to say here about this moment in time. And then that's all I can do. And then how it's interpreted once it's out there, I can't control how it's interpreted. So I had to get comfortable with the possibility that other people would find fault in the way that I described this moment in time. But I at least felt better knowing that I had taken the extra step to try to get some understanding of how it might be received. And while even today, and mine also came out in 2020, so it's also 5 years old in November. Even today, when people say that they read it, that's the chapter that worries me.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever come and said anything about that chapter, but that chapter remains the chapter that worries me. Now, in my memoir, I talk about miscarriage. I talk about sexual assault. I talk about marriage and divorce. I talk about pregnancy. Like, there are not light topics like in my memoir. And yet, out of all the things that I say about any of them, that's the one that puts my heart up into my throat.
Because we're human. And I think that, to me, this is a PSA, and it's not a PSA to work with you or me specifically, but it's a PSA to work with a publishing professional of some kind. Because when you work with someone who knows what they're doing, all of these things can be mitigated. Everything, there's a solution for every situation. But when you are going it alone and you're feeling that anxiety and feeling that stress and moving forward anyway, and you don't have someone to help you get back on, like, to keep the guardrails around you, or to brainstorm and say, I'm really uncomfortable with this, I just don't know how to address it. And instead you just say, YOLO, put it in there anyway. And then you have a backlash that is the exact opposite of what you're looking for. Or you just don't have it edited well at all, and you have the brand damage that inevitably occurs, especially for people who are doing this as part of some kind of, whether it's memoir into speaking or prescriptive nonfiction into some kind of business, it doesn't matter. All of that creates irreparable damage in some cases, and it's all avoidable. I think that's like, there's a service, there's a person, there's free, there's paid, there's every possible thing needed to support authors. It exists in some form. It's just a matter of finding the thing that works for you specifically.
Yeah. And what might work today might not work tomorrow. I mean, like right now, books might do it, and then you might find that they're not giving you enough, or, there might be free seminars and workshops that are only $25, $50, right? And then eventually, like, you might need something beyond that, right? But you've got to start somewhere. What I can say, though, is that, like, some of this market analysis that we've talked about today, and the outlining and the getting clear, those things are for free. Like, as long as you have the ability to get on the internet somewhere, or go to a bookshop or a library to start perusing titles and looking at books, like, you can start working on understanding whether or not your idea is worthy or relevant. Now, whether or not you're worthy or relevant, again, you're going to approach that a little bit differently, because that's more of an emotional, mental kind of thing. But if it's really the topic itself, right? We cannot stress this enough. Look at other titles, of books that have been published in the last couple of years that are similar to the one that you're thinking about writing. Note what about them you like, what about them you don't. That will also help you figure out how do you want to go about yours differently. It'll also help you to determine, okay, if you're reading them, what did they cover versus what you were planning to cover? So again, we're not saying you can't cover the same things, but like be aware of what other material is covering. Talk about your topic or your intended story with people who might eventually buy your book. Do they lean in? Do they get excited? Do they ask follow-up questions? Or do you get a very flat response? Like, if you're getting a flat response, again, it might not mean that the topic isn't good enough. It might mean that you didn't pitch it in the best way possible. Right? Either way, the feedback, whether that's really positive and interested or kind of gives you a signal or a cue as to what to do next. Totally. Think about what your angle or perspective is to the material, even if somebody else has a book already out there that's similar. Other things, Jen, that you want to add to this kind of like tangible list of questions that people should be asking themselves?
I feel like you really comprehensively just rattled through a lot of things.
Well, we had it listed on our notes.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, I feel like you went through the whole list, Ally. No, I feel like I think the bottom line is if you really are feeling called to write your story, to just start working your way toward it and figuring out, just taking one thing at a time as it comes up. Is it helpful? Yes, I think, like you said, we have 2 seasons full of content that really covers a lot of stuff around what we're talking about today.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you don't need to know the whole thing going into it. The more information you have, the better, great. But just start. And maybe starting for you is putting it on a Substack and doing a Substack newsletter. Maybe it's maybe it's a blog. Maybe it's just putting articles on your favorite social media platform and starting to get a sense of what that exposing yourself feels like. Because even if you're writing a personal story for a memoir, or you're writing some kind of thought leadership piece for your nonfiction book, it's still exposing. And you're still going to get a little taste of how your ego's reacting to it and how you're emotionally just kind of broadly reacting to it. And then you can see, okay, am I comfortable with this? Yes, no. All right, I'm okay. Now I'll do it again and see, does it get better? Does it feel worse? And those baby steps might be what leads into, okay, maybe I am ready to write a book. And then you can kind of pursue that path at the start, because I do have conversations with people where they're not ready for a book. Would I love to just blow smoke and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, you're ready for a book? No, because that's not actually being beneficial to somebody. It's more of like, maybe you should just go start over here first, have some, do some beta testing, have some conversations and see if it makes sense, because it's a time consuming endeavor and sometimes a costly from a resource endeavor.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it makes me think of the difference between the timing being right and the topic being worthy and relevant. And so I just want to put a plug in here. You could come to one of us and give us your idea and we could say 100% yes. But that doesn't mean that the idea is actually ready to be birthed, right? And so I think, Jen, what you're suggesting is you can still get started. You can start to kind of pick around with your idea and play around with your idea in a forum like Substack or your own blog or your email list or whatever it is, as you're figuring out some of these other things, but you might not be ready for a full-on book. And that is 100% true with people who write memoir. Sometimes you're not ready yet to write the book because you haven't gotten through some sort of aspect of your own healing journey in order to have enough distance or objectivity to write about the thing. Okay. And actually there's a woman that joined my masterclass a number of years ago. She's on I don't even know what version of the manuscript at this point, because she kept getting to another version and realizing something wasn't right. She needed to tweak it. And finally she got to the point where she realized she started it when she wasn't actually out of the woods.
Yeah.
From whatever she was experiencing.
Yeah.
And there is no magic number. There's not a magic month or year amount beyond something you've been through that I can really say oh, when you get to 3 years after the thing, that's when you can start writing about it. Everybody heals at different rates, and healing isn't necessarily a final destination. but getting to a place where you can actually talk about something or inspect or investigate or observe something with some level of objectivity and are able to recognize your own like dimensionality of that experience, where you're not always perfect all the time. And you've also made some mistakes that might've contributed to the thing that you went through, right? Like you're not ready to write a memoir until you get there.
Yeah.
So I've definitely been in places in my life where I'm like, I know this is going to be a book someday. And then I also recognize that that's not today, like, because I'm not on the other side of it yet. So I wanted to put that in there because I want people to recognize that sometimes those ideas and those stories 100% deserve the space that a book offers. But that doesn't mean that they happen now.
It is such an important piece of information, because I think sometimes we're like rushing to the healing, and sometimes the book is part of the healing, right? Sometimes there's still like that big question mark and unknown at the end of it, and you're trying to figure out like, okay, where do I actually end it? Because a memoir is thematic. It's a period of time. It's not an autobiography that is from birth to death. And so when it's not birth to death and it's just something that's thematic or a slice in time, you got to stop it somewhere. And so that's also kind of like that self-awareness to know like, okay, I'm too close to it to even know where do I reasonably stop it. Like, I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of people ask me like when I'm coming out with like a follow-up, like a second memoir. And I'm like, it's definitely on my radar, but I'm still in the thick of a lot of things that like, I'm just filing it away for a later date of like, oh yeah, this would be interesting for somebody maybe later, but it sure as hell would not be now. Right. But I know that because I know how to navigate these things, because it's what I do for a living. The average person, I feel like, struggles, which is why, I think our hope is to help people at least see things a little bit more clearly.
Yeah. So by all means, journal, you like keep notes, like track what's going on. All of that like raw material that you could be creating right now will 100% be helpful when you finally get to the other side to like do the thing. But also give yourself grace and recognize that maybe the timing isn't right for right now. So let's wrap it up here. Jen, what do you want to tell the lovely people about?
I am going to show myself as the cobbler with no shoes right now, but I'm still going to say it anyway. So my next book, my 8th book, will be out in February, and it is called Promote Your Purpose. I've known since the start it was going to be called Promote Your Purpose. My current subtitle, TBD still, is Leverage Your Book to Lead with Purpose, Grow Your Business, and Expand Your Impact. That is the current working. I think it sounds good, but I need some feedback still. So,
love it.
And I'm the cobbler with no shoes because I have nowhere to direct people. There's no sign up form yet. It's not on our website yet. It's like, I'm just starting to plant the seeds that my next book will be out in February. I'm hoping to start to do pre-orders maybe sometime in September. It's in the hands of beta readers right now, and it's going to my editor on June 22nd. So I have 1 month to go to feel like my part of this is I'm free from it for a little while. I'm handing the baby over.
Amazing. I love it. Loved it. Over here, let's see. Well, I already plugged the fact that Do Not Write a Book won its 3rd award this past weekend. So super excited about that. But from a like interact, how you can hang out with me kind of perspective. So Wednesday mornings, I'm still doing the Get Fucking Writing morning group, 7 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. And that's free and open to anybody who's looking for that kind of weekly accountability touch point, bedhead and all. So anybody interested in that can just send me a DM. I'll send you the calendar invite and you can show up when it works for you. Apart from that, let's see, next Tuesday, the 27th at 1 Eastern, I'm running a workshop, mapping your memoir along the story arc. So that's really great for those people who already kind of know their story to some extent, have kind of that timeline or trajectory of how their journey goes, but don't have any idea how it gets structured into a narrative timeline that goes into a book. So again, DM me, drop something in the comments if you want the info, and I will get that to you. And then what else? End of June, I'm doing Writing a Memoir That Matters. So that's one that I did back in March. It was a big hit, bringing it back at the end of June. And this is a great way for people who are just getting started and don't know if their story is relevant and being told. this is the workshop for you, because we're going to talk about mission, message, and motivation, the 3 aspects that you really need to know. And I call that the memoir compass. And so if you're unclear about whether or not your story matters, you want to be there. So connect with me. Let me get you onto the email list so you know as soon as it opens, so you can register for a spot.
I love that. That's so good. Oh, so good. There's so much goodness happening. I don't know. I know that like we intentionally stay non-political, but there's a lot happening in the world right now that we all can kind of agree to. But I'm finding a lot of hope and optimism in just the amount of people who are stepping up and stepping forward right now to share their stories, because they're like, if there was ever a time to do whatever, insert whatever the story is, now is it. And I'm loving that like sense of urgency that has been created by some chaos that is around us.
Yep. No time like the present, really, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. I would hate to think that women will have to go back to writing as men under pen names, because the right to pen anything ourselves will go away. So
crazy.
Write your stories, my friends. We need them now more than ever, in whatever format that takes. So we'll be back again next month with, let's see, what are we talking about next month?
June 12th, and how to cultivate and nurture an audience for my book.
I'm just going to let you talk the whole time on that one, and I'm just going to sit back and take notes.
Maybe I'll have my pre-order page up by then, or maybe I'll have a place to like send people.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe June's going to be like the motivation to do that.
I think you're right. I think I have no choice now. I've now made the public declaration, which is what I tell our authors to do. So now I have to. Ta-da! Thank you.
Accountability built in. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us today for this episode of Unscripted with Ally and Jen, and we will catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.